And good morning on this fine Friday morning, sort of. Okay, so today I wanted to share some stories I've had recently working with Docker and NavContainerHelper in order to create Business Central containers. And I thought I had most of this stuff figured out, but of course, things change and I run into new, exciting, fun errors. So I thought I'd share those with you because if I'm running into them, I'm going to bet at least one or two other people are having the same issue. So let me have a sip of coffee. Okay, so with that, let's get started. And a quick housekeeping note. I stream, I stream live on Periscope, YouTube, and Twitch. It seems that Periscope is the most convenient for a lot of people because it just shows up in your Twitter stream and you can just watch it right there, either on a mobile device or browser. Very convenient. But it's fine if you're just kind of watching the little postage stamp size video and listening, but the video quality and even the audio quality is pretty poor. It's highly compressed, low resolution. So if you're looking to actually read anything on the screen or want to see what's going on in the video, I strongly recommend heading over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/SteveEndo, and watching the video there. It'll be in full glorious 1080p. And it is also available on Twitch, which seems to have slightly higher quality. It seems to be very good quality on Twitch, but I believe those videos will only be available for 28 days. So with that said, quick note, I see this a lot because I make a lot of mistakes. I try a bunch of different things, and a lot of times the NavContainerHelper build script, when I'm creating a new Business Central container, it will fail. So it'll give me an error and things will just get stuck. And when that happens, where is it here? I will get an orphaned, in this case, an orphan container. So you'll notice the name. I think this might have been introduced with the new artifact design of NavContainerHelper. So when your NavContainerHelper new BC container script fails and you get an error and it just aborts, you will often see this type of kind of like a dead container sitting there, and it'll have this weird name. That's just, I believe that's just a temporary placeholder that's used. It's usually two random words as far as I could tell. And so you'll see this. So as far as I know, just go ahead and delete that container. It's stuck, it never finished. So I see that all the time. So I thought I'd share that. Interesting. Next up. The other night, let me get my head out of the way. The other night, I was trying to build a container and I was doing some testing, and I noticed that it was taking a really long time. And when I looked at the activity, I saw retrying download, and it looked like it was trying to download the BC artifact for the version that I was trying to build. I thought that was odd, and I looked at the download speed. So if you see down here, I have a tool installed on my machines called NetSpeed Monitor. And it's an older tool, hasn't been updated in a while, but with Windows compatibility, you can get it to install on a newer version of Windows. And you'll notice here the download speed is 10.4 megabit, and that was captured right at a peak. So it turns out that it took 15 minutes roughly to download the 625 megabyte artifact zip file. And that is roughly a 5.5 megabit average. Now, I have a 100 megabit fiber internet connection that is usually pretty darn good. So I was pretty sure this wasn't on my end. And overall, this container took roughly 47 minutes to build, which is really, really unusual. So something was wrong. So of course, I took a screenshot, posted this on Twitter, and there's an answer. If I can find the right button. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the answer appears to be that for whatever reason, NavContainerHelper on my server, my VM, encountered some type of download error, had an issue. Downloading the artifact from the content delivery network or an edge server, whatever infrastructure is being used. And when it does that, it falls back on the source storage repository, I guess in Azure Blob, and that Azure Blob storage just happens to be in Europe. And I don't know if this was just my experience or if there are multiple geographic regions, but I'm assuming Freddie is publishing to a European Azure region, and that's why I'm hitting Europe. I don't know if maybe Asia has their own blob storage or not. But so he's just saying, hey, if that happens, it's probably due to some CDN connectivity issue. You can cancel and rerun. So rather than, if you notice this issue, rather than waiting and downloading at 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 megabit, you may want to just cancel the build if you're able to detect and notice that, and just retry and see if you can get a better connection and have better download speeds. And so I came back the next day and I tried again, and I got a solid 100 megabit download speed, and the build was in minutes. So huge difference if you're downloading from the CDN versus if it's reverting or falling back to the Azure Blob storage. So one of the questions I have is, okay, is there a way, if let's say we automate our BC container build process, is there a way to monitor this? Let's say that we've allocated 15 minutes to build a container and we want that done so that it doesn't cause a train wreck or things to stack up in our DevOps pipeline. Can we monitor this? I'm not sure. Can we tell if this NavContainerHelper new BC container build process finishes in a certain amount of time? And if it doesn't, we abort and retry. These are just questions that I have that I'll want to be looking into once I figure out how to use Azure DevOps. And can we directly monitor download speed? I suspect that'll be harder. I suspect we'll just be looking at elapsed time for a given task and does it complete or not? So questions I have, can we detect errors? So that's just an interesting data point for you there. This is another thing I've been noticing now that named images and artifacts are available with NavContainerHelper. When I choose to create a named image, in this case, I was using a named image called my BC image. That gets created, and I see those images there, and you'll notice that it has the different sandbox build numbers. So here we have 14.897 and 14.759, but with underneath those, I see these nones, and I've seen the none previously when a given image got old or is expired and was replaced, and I don't quite understand the mechanism for that, but I was seeing it now here, and there are 4 of them per named image. So this puzzled me. I was like, okay, of course. I asked on Twitter, what is this? And so Freddie tried to explain. Obviously, Twitter's a pretty constrained platform to give long explanations. So my understanding is that these are essentially dependencies. So going back here, my BC image, let's just pretend, has a dependency of this image, which then has a dependency of this image, which then has a dependency of this one. And that ultimately depends upon this image down here, this 1339 generic, which is the base generic OS image that I'm working with for my particular version of Windows. So he isn't quite sure what's causing that for me, but the concept is that these are kind of intermediate image builds that are being created during the named image creation process. And they're just intermediate builds that are still exist as dependencies. I don't know if this is a quirk of Docker, but I don't fully understand it. But when I delete my named image, all of the 4 of those dependencies do disappear. So they're not real images. They're not Docker, as he points out, that Docker really doesn't know that they exist. They're kind of just like intermediate builds. Once you delete that named image, those disappear as well, and everything's cleaned up. So as far as I could tell, I can just ignore these nones. It's just some weird artifact of the named image build process. And he points out that if I'm not using named images, I shouldn't see this. So I don't quite understand the process. But on Twitter, someone else, I believe it was Daniel, replied that he uses named images and he doesn't see this behavior. So I've been trying to just delete everything, delete all my containers, delete all my images, fully clean slate in Docker, and start over to see what happens. And see if I can reproduce this or if it goes away. I'm not quite sure yet. But I haven't been successful in that for a different reason, which I'll share. So this is just an example. When I go ahead and delete my named image, it says, okay, great, I'm deleting my BC image. It deletes those image files. But you'll notice it's trying to apparently delete those dependencies, and those are already gone. Like they never even existed. So when Docker tries to clean those up, there's nothing there. So it does clean them up, but results in some odd behavior. Okay, this is just a tip. I've kind of mentioned this before. When you're doing NavContainerHelper builds and you're creating your images, even if it is successful, I'd recommend occasionally glancing at your logs just to see if you run into any errors or warnings. So I have said, oh, great, my container got created. I'm happy. I ignored the log because it looked like, the matrix scrolling by and I didn't know what I was looking at. But if you ignore this thing like pulling FS layer where you have dozens and dozens of lines repeating, just look at some of this information. Okay, here's my host Windows server, great Docker version, and it's cleaning things up. And what's going on here? Application artifact 14759, and the image does not exist, so I'm going to build it. And just glance through, it'll start to kind of make sense, like, okay, I kind of tell what it's doing there. Look for warnings and look for errors. Even if you don't understand any of this other stuff, look for a warning, look for an error, and see if anything makes sense to you. Because occasionally you'll get something like, password does not meet complexity requirements, or unable to determine OS build, something like that. And those will be somewhat understandable, and take a look at those, see if there's anything that you can do about it. Or even if your build completes successfully, just look into it to see if it's something you need to fix. So some word of advice there based on my lots of errors of experience here. So I mentioned that I was seeing those none orphaned or dependency containers. So I cleaned out everything. I deleted all of my containers. I deleted all of my images, fresh start. I even upgraded Docker on one of my machines. And on 2 different servers, 100% clean, no containers, no images, I tried to create a new BC container base with a saved name image called my BC image. And what do you know? I got this error. And it says, error response from daemon, pull access denied for my BC image, repository doesn't exist. I don't know what this means yet. I just saw it this morning. And I thought, well, that's strange. I've run NavContainerHelper before using named images. What happened? Now, one thing I did do is I upgraded Docker Enterprise on this server and I installed it from scratch onto another server. So rather than being on the old version of 1903.5, I believe I am now on 1903.11. So I'm curious to see if this might be an issue related to that Docker upgrade, because I've never seen this before, and that's the only thing I could think of that I changed. So I'm going to try a couple things. I'm going to try creating a new BC container without the named image parameter, see if that works. And then I guess I'll try creating a named image with a different name. Maybe it doesn't like my BC image because I've had that image before. But as you saw back here, I used my BC image twice with two different BC versions. So it's not like it doesn't like my BC image fundamentally. So not sure what's going on, but I currently cannot build a BC container, at least not with a named image. So now I'm gonna have to delete everything again, try running it without a named image, and let's just give that a try. I haven't prepared for this, but so here I have one of my servers. This is my demonstration server, dev01. And so I just got this error. It's like, okay, pull access denied for BC image. Repository does not exist. May require Docker login. Requested access to the resource is denied. So is it a permission issue? Docker pull. And I don't know Docker well enough, but this is, oh, my BC image. Now, if I go down here, these are the I don't have any containers. I do have this image, and notice my BC image, 14.928, my BC image, 14.928. So it's unable to pull. Okay. So it looks like it's there. So now, what if I just rerun this? I don't have a container, so I should be able to rerun this because I don't have a test one sitting there. Let's just see what happens. Okay. Parent contains record exception. Wow. Okay. Not sure what's going on there. Okay, I just hit save and it ran. Something strange is going on. So one note is that I want to know how long NavContainer takes to complete its process. Is it 3 minutes? Is it 8 minutes? Is it sometimes 15 minutes? If it's normally 8 minutes and it takes 20, I want to know about that so I can monitor it and figure out why, because clearly there's a problem. So what I've done is, I know nothing about PowerShell, but I looked up, well, how do you record elapsed time in PowerShell? So this is one way. There are probably a dozen ways, but one way is you use getDate, you store it in a variable, and then you can do and store it in a variable called start time. Put that at the beginning of your script. And then I do a new getDate minus the start time, and that will get me elapsed time. And then you use some type of formatting and convert it to ticks, and you get your elapsed time. This variable is that I copied is called total time. And then I output at the very end, right host, elapsed time, total time. So this way, assuming the script if I ever get it to complete successfully, it will output the elapsed time, the total elapsed time it took for my NavContainerHelper script to complete. So here we go. And you notice now I'm at Docker 19.03.11 as I upgraded this. And that's an entirely different story. I could probably do a blog post or video on that because that seems to be a point of concern for people running Docker Desktop. Waldo and others have said that when they tried to upgrade Docker Desktop, they had catastrophic results and caused all sorts of problems. I don't know what those problems were, but I can kind of get the point that it caused issues. They weren't able to reuse their containers or recreate. So I decided to upgrade my Docker Enterprise engine, which is the Windows service, from the 1903-05 to 1903, happens to be 11. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to upgrade the Docker EE, and I kind of figured it out. It was all PowerShell. I did it completely wrong, kind of intentionally. I didn't take any precautions, just ripped it out, tried to install it, had all sorts of errors, but 13, 14 reboots later, it just started working. So it wasn't that bad. Everything came back up. There were a few kind of nervous moments, but it seems to be working fine, with the exception of this. This error, if I go back here. This, I am a little concerned, might be related to the new version of Docker Enterprise, but let's find out. Okay, so we have the artifact, and it looks like, I can't tell if it downloaded that or not, or whether it was able to reuse that same artifact. Pulling from nav, container version 1339. I believe that is my OS build. Let's just check that. Let me just do sanity check WinVer. Yep, that's my OS build 1339, and I believe there is a newer one already. Let's see, this is Dev01. Let me check my other server, WinVer. Yeah, so on my VM here with Docker, I have 1282. So already I updated this recently, and already it's gone from 1282 to 1339. So that's an older one. This is the latest one, or newer one, on Dev01. Okay, so it got the fragment. Is that what it's called? Artifact? Yeah, artifact. It's unzipping the artifact, and this is about, I looked at this file. It's a zip file that's about 625 megabytes for this particular one. Obviously, may vary depending on which build, but 625 megs. So looks like it is expanding that, and from there, it should be able to use these artifact installation components. It's like MSIs, install scripts, additional installation software, and it will apply that to the generic base image for my OS. So let's see what happens. Downloading artifacts, and so here it's unpacking OpenXML, rewrite .NET Core 104, Windows hosting. That looks like the IIS component for .NET Core. Copying those artifacts over. Are you excited? Because I'm excited. I'll be excited if this works. Okay, so while we're waiting, let me just check and make sure things are still streaming okay. Okay, copying database. Well, we're making some progress here. And I see Belinda stopped in briefly on YouTube. I'm excited for you. Yes. This is exciting, folks. Few things are as exciting as watching a very long PowerShell script. Okay, so copy applications, BC artifacts cache. Okay. So this seems to be going smoothly. Now, I didn't look to see where this started to fail. It looks like it's at the right at the steps where it is generating the named image. Yep, so right here, let me hop back to here. So right about here, so this is 4 of 6, so right after that completes, it's trying to clean up intermediate containers, and that is what is, some step here is failing. So we're almost there. Four of 6, copy nav DVD. And I don't know what any of these commands mean. I'm just kind of, referring from the English. So we have BC artifacts, intermediate container. Interesting, removing intermediate container B5. 8F, copy run, almost done, fingers crossed. Come on. I think this is a little longer than I'm used to. And okay. So this is one kind of challenge about doing this testing. It's time consuming. So I'll often, kick this off, run it, have an error, try to make a fix, run it again. And if it goes smoothly, I think it takes roughly 7 to 8 minutes. If the image already exists, like the named image, it can run in 2 to 3 minutes. But it's a lot of waiting. So I now have 2 VMs that are set up to run Docker and do this. And then I have 1 physical server. So I now have 3 machines set up where I can just do tests. I can upgrade Docker on one, see what breaks. I can rebuild with a named image on another, build on without a named image on the third. So this is, why don't I do that? This is my dev01 machine. That's my kind of demo machine for these videos. So let me go over to my Docker VM, and while that is running, let me just minimize that. And I might as well kick off a script. And what I'm going to do here is, let me just see what containers I have. Oh, 5 of 6. Okay, so we're close. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss the action. Okay, running in, installing URL rewrite, installing Business Central. So we're looking for removing intermediate container and then successfully built. And I think this is the last stage of the named image creation process. While that is occurring, let me get this out of the way and start this. Okay, open XML, got it. Okay, so I've got a sandbox one on my other machine. And let me just see what Docker version I have on my other OS. Docker version, 190304. So I have a slightly older version on my other VM. So I could perform the same test, and I'm guessing, since I'm looking at it, I'm guessing it'll be successful. So it could be an issue with the Docker engine .11, the latest version. Okay. And that's an example of a warning that you may see in the log you'll want to take a look at. But in this case, I think this is just because it's waiting for the SQL Express to start up. copying web client files. So it's further preparing the named image. Okay, so it seems to be going well. Okay, so that is taking a while. So that's dev01. Let me log into my physical machine. Okay, need to turn that on. Okay, copying additional elements to the named image. And so, like I said, this does take a while. And so I now have finally built 2 VMs, 1 physical machine. I can have, in theory, I can have different versions of Docker on them, although I'd rather not. Can have different containers. I can do different tests. And at this point, all of my stuff is throwaway. So if I need to delete all my containers, delete all my images, uninstall Docker, reinstall it, I'm okay with that. And I just keep doing that over and over, because if I only do it once, I just don't remember it. When I was starting to work with Docker and PowerShell, I didn't remember any of the commands. Docker PS, I couldn't even remember that. I just had to keep typing it over and over, creating containers, deleting images, recreating everything. I'm just doing that over and over and over without, until I can remember what the commands are, because I got sick of looking it up. So now I kind of understand what's going on, have some proficiency with the basic commands, don't have to look it up every time. And some errors I'm getting familiar with. Other errors are new, like this one that I'm trying to figure out now. Okay, database collation. Let's see if I stored. Removing intermediate container. Okay, well, apologize for the delay. Such is life. Now, this is a VM, and I am getting the feeling that this VM, my dev01 VM, is slower for some reason. I'm not sure why. Things seem to take much longer than I'm used to. I don't think it's CPU, because I have the same virtual CPUs assigned. I have memory allocated. I don't think it's the network. So I'm going to have to do some side-by-side tests with this VM and my other VM to see if there's a difference. But I do know that the NavContainerHelper and the Docker creation process on my physical server machine, it's a dedicated desktop class server, it is quite fast and quite reliable. So I may start working with that again, get that set up as a demo machine and use that because it is faster. Okay, starting Business Central Service tier. This has got to be close to the end. This is taking much longer than I would expect, much longer than my other environments. So let me just kick it off on my other VM. Test 1. Okay. So on the second Docker 1 VM, I have run essentially the same script, but this one is on a uses Docker Enterprise 190304, which is an older version. So starting Business Central service tier. And here it is having to download that zip file. I don't know if I have, okay, I don't have NetSpeedMon installed on this machine, but let's just see how fast that is going. Okay. Performance, Ethernet. Okay, so it's not doing much download right now. It's already downloaded. So either it existed on disk or is really quick. Yeah, I think this VM is just really slow. I may have to scrap it and come up with a new one. Okay, 1282. So this is the newer OS build. Downloading. Okay, so there we go with a download. 54, there we go, 100 megabit per second. So that's showing us that the artifact is downloading quickly from the CDN, so that's good news. And back here, we are still starting Business Central service tier. So if you aren't asleep, you can fast forward if you're watching the recorded video and like wave my arms when something happens. Okay, so is that quick? Oh, actually, no, it's still at, huh. Yeah, looks like that's 100 megabit. Okay, so it downloaded it. Okay, so I could have some issue with this. So anyway, I would have wanted to see whether this generates a file, but I don't know that sitting around for 20 minutes. That's the one downside with live streaming. I can't just, through the magic of editing, make this magically appear and do a ta-da moment and pull the baked food right out of the oven. So anyway, I hope you're having a great Friday. I'll hang out for a couple more minutes in the hope that this finishes, because I have other things to do as well. I normally just let this run and come back and see the results. So it is painful for me too. So we've got 2 container builds running. It's just like, it's the PowerShell and Docker version of watching paint dry. Maybe I need to have some jokes. Yeah. So another reason I'm doing this with all of these test machines is because I don't want to have to learn about this stuff in a critical or production environment. So these are all throwaway VMs. It's all testing. This is all learning. 30% CPU. Memory seems okay. Network is not bound. So this appears to be just kind of CPU bound. Maybe disk is busy as well, but not sure. These are both running on the same physical host. Let's see who wins. It's a race. Well, I don't know why Belinda's sticking around. She must have Friday off. Expanding archive. Okay, so, yep, this is a ways back. A car full of tech support people get a flat tire. They all get out and look at the tire. Then one of them says, Maybe if we turn the car off and on back, car off and back on. Yep. Watching geek shows is how I spend my time off. Well, I empathize. I'm sorry. It must be a slow day on Netflix and other streaming channels. But good morning, Belinda, or good afternoon. It's your lunchtime back in the East Coast. And yeah, this is how I spend my morning. I should be doing some work, but I wanted to share this information. I'm glad I saved this for last. Let me see if there's any other slides to cover. I think this is the last one. Yep. So this is the last one. I just saw this, I think, this morning. So I just tacked this onto the end and trying to figure this out. And I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and he noted that it seems like Docker and NavContainerHelper is kind of intimidating in this kind of new, scary world for people who are new to the BC world and even veteran Nav folks. So even if they've been Nav developers for years, this is this kind of weird new realm. And hey, you're not alone. I totally empathize. It's new to everyone. It's new to experienced Nav developers. It's new to non-Nav developers. It's new to the folks who came over from the GP world. I'm used to a Windows VM with SQL Server and the dynamic GP client and Visual Studio. I never used Docker. I kind of I did a very good job of avoiding PowerShell, actually. I didn't know how to use PowerShell at all, didn't know one thing about PowerShell. So it's okay. It's not that hard. It's just, some new language you got to learn. Docker and NavContainerHelper, I will admit, that is kind of a little bit inscrutable still, but I'm slowly learning it. So notice how this one is still stuck at starting Business Central service tier, but this one looks like it's kind of chugging along. Copy platform architects, well, maybe it is behind. Application star, image sandbox. I can't tell. So that is why I added the start time and elapsed time here. I want to see what's going on. I want to be able to diagnose issues I may be having with the artifact download, with the NavContainerHelper build process, if it's taking too long, what's going on. And now I'm thinking that one of my VMs is just not quite up to par. It's a little slow in the virtual sense. So here we are, step 1 of 2, 3, 4. Look at how quickly those are going by. 4 of 6 did take a while. This is taking forever. And I think it is normal for the named images to take a while, but I think Freddie said that in his experience, the named image will take, say, 8 minutes to complete, whereas once you have that named image, you can then create a new container off of that named image in roughly 3 minutes. Oh, we have movement. Importing Cronus file, 926 seconds. That's, what, 10, 15 minutes? Wow. So that took a while. Let me do the math. Sorry, my brain is a little slow. So 926 divided by 60. Yeah, that's over 15 minutes. I don't know what that elapsed time includes, but that took a while. So installation complete. So anyway, Freddie was saying roughly 8 minutes for a named image, roughly 3 minutes for a new container once you have that named image, if it's the exact same BC build and your OS build didn't change. I'm seeing times on this VM much longer than that, and I'm not sure what's going on. I also did see times around that, 8 minutes and 3 minutes previously, but something's changed in the last week or two, and this is taking forever. Like this alone is taking 15 minutes. I did a test. It took 47 minutes, as I mentioned, when my artifact download took a long time. Really, really long build times for these. So not quite sure what's going on. So what I may end up doing is trying it without named image, do several tests without a named image, see if it's any faster, see how long those take. But it used to work fine. Now it's broken. And okay, come on. Well, there we go. 5 of 6, run. Oh, okay. So I comment on Periscope from Scott saying he was in the 45-minute range as well. And so interesting, great to hear. I swear that I was able to do a named image in 8 minutes 2 weeks ago. I timed it, I looked at it, and then I did a subsequent new container based on that named image, and it was around 3 minutes. I was like, great, my benchmarks are matching Freddie's. But now something is really slow, and I'm wondering if maybe a new build is causing like these installation steps to take a really long time. But I mean, this is really painful. If it takes an hour to build a new container, jeez. And so now that I'm seeing this, I am looking into, can I use Azure DevOps to, I know nothing about it. So I'm assuming there's an agent. Hopefully I can have an agent on my VMs or my hosts where it updates NavContainerHelper. Maybe it even updates Docker, although that's kind of scary. I'm not that comfortable with Docker updates, but at least it updates NavContainerHelper using the PowerShell scripts. That should be easy, and that ensures I have the latest version, because that is a constant struggle. NavContainerHelper is updated and released so frequently. It's like every day you need to update it. And then once I do that, I want to be able to wipe my containers, maybe even wipe my images, and rebuild containers every single day. So 8 a.m. when I wake up, I have fresh images, fresh containers, everything's ready to go. And if this is taking 45 minutes to an hour to complete, that is assuming it is even successful and I don't get some error after 45 minutes, then I'd rather have that done in an automated basis at 2 a.m. than me sitting here in excruciating pain. Memory usage increasing. So, okay, so while that's going on, let's just take a peek. See what our containers look like. So let's do a Docker ps-a. Whoa, my PowerShell is kind of freaky. Let me close that, reopen. Okay, let's try this again. Docker ps-a. Okay, so there's that, the random word phrase, determined underscore, that's a fun one, Golic, and created 21 minutes ago, but it says exited. Okay, that's not a good sign. And then let's do Docker images -a. And we have our generic image, 1339. That's my OS image from 7 days ago. So that hasn't changed. I haven't had a Windows update. My build hasn't changed. So in theory, that generic image should stay there. Now, I thought I cleaned everything up. Oh, okay. We got some action here. What are we going? Intermediate container. Okay. 85. Running in, removing intermediate container. Okay. Look at that. May require Docker login. I wonder if something changed with the, oof, that was painful. Okay, so let's take a look at our images now. So it did create this new my BC image, named image, based on the 14.947 build, but with that new build, it fails to create a container. Now, if I leave this container here, it should see that I have the container ready. Let me just see if my if the container is sitting there. So there's no container. It apparently failed or whatever and cleaned up that temporary determined Gallic container. So let's just run this again, see what happens. And unfortunately, because it failed with an error, there's probably a way to do a try catch in PowerShell. I didn't see the elapsed time, but I'll look at the video later, but painfully long. So now it should see that my BC image already exists, 1497, waiting for container test 1, okay. Oh, look at that, test 1. Maybe it's just something is failing as part of the named image process. I can't tell if that image is valid, 14.947. I'll have to post to GitHub. So I think I did a blog post or video, and I at least mentioned it, that if you have an error with NavContainerHelper, you can go to GitHub and you can post an issue on there, and Freddie will take a look. And you just want to supply as much information as you can. And so I obviously have plenty of examples of this now. So there's our 947. It looks like this container is setting up. Now, this could be, I don't know if we've seen this before. So here we have starting service tier. I don't think we got this far. Host name is test1. It's almost as if when it goes to create the test container, my test1 container, it's not able to properly access that named image that just got created. But it looks like now, a few seconds later or a minute later, creating container test1 from image, that works okay. So let's go back. Can we see any lines? Pulling latest image. It's like it's still building. These lines, I believe, are related to building the named image. Installing components. I think that's still named image. Starting. There's copying. Yeah, installation complete. Removing intermediate container. Successfully built 7.1. Okay, so let's see what 7.1 is. Okay, so that was successfully built 7.1, which is the 14.947 named image. Tagged it. Took 14 seconds. Ouch. Pulling image. Okay, so after it creates the named image, it tries to do an image pull, which I need to look that up and see what that means. But it looks like that step is failing. But if I subsequently do a new BC container off of that named image, it is successful. And it looks like it's creating that. So let's do Docker pull. I've heard of this. I don't know what it means. I've never used it. Docker pull pulls a single image from the registry. Repository can contain multiple images. Most of your images will be created on top of the base image. So it's like pulling to create a container. Okay, so I'll probably create an issue with Freddy. Look at that. Wow. Elapsed time 3 minutes 30 seconds. So holy macaroni. The named image creation process took forever. And it did not used to be that way. I am positive that it used to be less than 10 minutes. It's now taking, I'll have to look at the video and see how long it took. It took an eternity. It fails, but it looks like the named image is created successfully. It's just the subsequent Docker pull command that is failing. And I don't know what that means. I don't know why, but it's some permission thing. Could be my machine, could be due to the Docker build 11. But now that I have that named image, everything is ready and prepped for a new BC container based on that image, and test one created in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So my elapsed time script is working successfully now as long as my script completes successfully. I'm going to look in to see if PowerShell has a try catch that in case it does fail, at least know how long it took for it to fail. But cool. So now let me just do a second one. It's going to take 3 minutes. You poor souls have been hanging around if you're watching this video. You've been hanging around this long, so apparently you are a glutton for punishment. So now we'll do it again. Hopefully in 3.5 minutes we get a container called test2. So while that is going, that's great to see. So even though it fails, everything went fine. It just didn't create the container. I'm now able to create the containers based off the named image, Docker ps-a. Okay, so here is test 1. It's created test 2. Test 1 is healthy. Test 2 is starting. It's kicking that off. Slick. Okay, so it looks like that's just a glitch in the matrix. I'll let Freddy know, see what he says, see if it's something I'm doing wrong. Maybe something changed about Docker Enterprise build 11. Let me just check that. So if you want to know what version you're using, type Docker version, and in my case 19.03.11. And I don't know why it shows it twice. Docker Engine Enterprise. This node is not a swarm manager. I don't know why they say that. But it shows the version twice. API version 1.4.0. Okay, so now if I go to Docker Engine, I am running as local system. So is the problem when it says pull access denied for BC image? I'm guessing the problem is in the permissions with this PowerShell session. Although I use PowerShell ISE using run as administrator, so it should be running as elevated permission. Maybe I need to reboot. Maybe I need to close and relaunch this session. I'm not sure. But okay, so if you run into this error, don't get discouraged. It looks like the named image gets created successfully after a 17 eternity wait, and then you can just rerun the exact same script. It'll detect your named image, and in 3.5 minutes or so, you should have a good container. Okay, cool. So that is what it's like to learn about Docker on the fly. And let's just do a Docker PSA. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, so it says unhealthy on our test 2. And I've always wondered about that. Like, I don't know what that means yet. I don't know if it's still starting. I have had issues where when I stop and restart a container, it is unhealthy and it is definitely got issues. Okay, so that took 3 minutes. Test 2 created successfully. But you notice it still says unhealthy. Okay, so let's go see what that means. Let's open the test2 web client. Now, when I see starting in the status, I'm like, okay, it can still be unhealthy, but once it's done, it should be good. I don't know why it's showing unhealthy. Oh, now it shows healthy. So after 3 minutes, even though everything completed successfully, even though I'm able to launch a web browser, it finally goes to a healthy status. So I'd love to know how Docker PS-A is determining the health status. Is there a heartbeat in the container? Like, why does everything appear to be fine, but after 3 minutes it suddenly says healthy? Why does that take so long? I'd love to know how to get a better determination on that without waiting 3 minutes, because I'm impatient. So this is loading. And fingers crossed. I'm assuming this takes a while to start up because it's the first time. Now I'm at 7.8 gigs available usage, 6.2 gigs used. Spikes in the 70 CPU. And this is on a Hyper-V virtual machine running on a server, but it's a desktop class. I believe, yeah, it's an i7, Core i7 desktop that has Server 2019 installed. Usually it's a very fast machine, but this container or this VM, I'm kind of wondering, but maybe this is new with the NavContainerHelper. That took forever. Okay, let's just see if we're still healthy. We are. Let's try test one. Let's see. It's test one, test two. Where's my test one? There we go. So let's open test one. Oh, there we go. So, that was painful. And I think this is new. It shows sandbox environment preview message. I just noticed this recently. I don't recall noticing that before. There we go. And this is admin and what is it? Capital P at SSWORDW0. Let's see if that works. Okay, not secure. Okay, cool. And, okay. Got a comment on Twitch. So divide the CPU graph. Yeah, let's give that a try. So this is 4 virtual CPUs, logical CPUs. So change graph to logical processor. So there we go. So in my case, on my VMs, add disk to the performance tab. How do I do that? View. Show graphs? No. Hide graphs. Only way I know how to show disk is open Resource Manager. I thought disk would be there as well, but so yeah, it could be disk contention. So here's my disk. Let's see. Yeah, it's probably pretty hammered. I don't know how to read this. Disk reads, writes. I'll have to look into that to see. Okay, there it goes. It's dropping down. Okay. So to add disk, you need to do it by command line. Yeah, that is one thing I've noticed. I'm like, wait a minute, where's my disk? So I've just been saying, okay, CPU and memory are my 2 things that I'm looking at here. So right now with 2 containers running, this is a busy little boy here. But finally, after the named image debacle, I get an error. It fails on the Docker pull command, but everything appears to complete successfully. I can then create containers off of that named image. 3.5 minutes. Works pretty slick. So I'll submit an issue, see if it's something that I've done wrong, see if it is something with version 11 or the build 11 of Docker Enterprise. And with that, I think that's good. I'm ready to go collapse, drink some more coffee, and I have a bunch of actual work to do. Okay, so I need to run diskperf-y. I might need a reboot, disk show up. Okay, so I'll give that a try. And how do I reply on this? Thanks. Okay, so I will give that a try. One note, with Docker Engine Enterprise, when you install it or uninstall or reinstall. I have confirmed after doing this 2 or 3 times, you do need a full server reboot. So you'll install it, the service will be there, it will not start. And you'll get an error, something about like a virtualization component or some DLL is not present, and no indication as to why or how to solve the problem. A reboot, and then you wait a couple minutes and it should start up. So you need to be very patient. It absolutely does require a reboot based on my experience. And then even after the reboot, I have to wait a couple minutes before the service will start up successfully. But it does start up and everything is fine. If you need to upgrade a Docker Enterprise, my experience is, in my case, I cleaned out all containers, deleted everything, deleted all images. And I believe you should, to do it properly, you should stop the Docker service, wait for everything to shut down, and then you will uninstall module, uninstall component. It's uninstalling one of the elements through the, actually I have it right here. You will uninstall package. So you will do an uninstall package Docker, Docker Microsoft provider, and then you will reboot in order to remove that. And then you will reinstall it, and then you will need to reboot again, be very patient, wait for the restart, and that should work. And you might need to reboot one more time, but I rebooted so many times, I don't know. But it does require a reboot. And with that, thank you for your patience. Feel free and fast forward through the video. That was super painful. And it's going to be super painful for me to create a table of contents because I forgot to use my magic buttons to record TOC entries in the log. And now that things are calm, I'm showing 12% CPU, 13 with 6.6 gigs of RAM. And there are my containers. And those came up. Test 1 came up okay. Test 2, let's go to customers. Yeah, look at that CPU spike. Not the speediest system in town. Okay, with that, have a great Friday. Go do something more productive than watch me stare at Docker PowerShell scripts all morning. Have a good one.